When the Atlanta Hawks made the Eastern Conference Finals in 2021 after having a pretty lackluster start to their season, which led to the firing of then head coach Lloyd Pierce and then being replaced by interim head coach Nate McMillan, who was eventually the permanent coach after that incredible playoff run, the Hawks were seen as this Cinderella story of a team that managed to take out the top-seeded Sixers in the Eastern Conference Finals, but an up-and-coming team that was soon going to be a championship contender while building around their franchise player in Trae Young. That is until the following season when the Hawks grossly underperformed and nearly missed the play-in had it not been for their improved play down the stretch of the season, and then needed the play-in to get into the playoffs as the 9th seed before being beaten badly in the first round by the Miami Heat in 5 games. And it was clear then that the Atlanta Hawks, that this team needed to make some big changes if they were going to be able to compete for a title and get back to where they found themselves in 2021. And as such, the Hawks made a big-time trade that somewhat sent shockwaves around the NBA with how much they had to give up to get the player they were looking for, and that was the trade they made with the San Antonio Spurs to get their star in Dejounte Murray. And thus, nearly 25 games into the regular season, the Hawks have looked okay, but not what most people would have expected with a star-studded backcourt duo in Trae Young and Dejounte Murray. And it gets worse with the apparent tension that is building in the Hawks locker room, namely the tension between their franchise player Trae Young and head coach Nate McMillan. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy the content, feel free to subscribe, as this is still a new channel, and you know it's hard to grow channels in their beginning stages. As of right now, about 96% of you are not subscribed to the channel. I know some of you watching are probably getting tired of me saying this at the beginning of every video, which I promise to stop doing that in the coming weeks. It's just you got to start somewhere in building an audience. But enough about that, let's get back into the topic at hand. So I'm sure most of you have now seen the report that came out by The Athletic that Trae Young chose not to attend the Hawks game against the Denver Nuggets the other night after an exchange he had with Nate McMillan during shoot-around. Now, for some context, what happened was Trae had been experiencing some shoulder pain that had been bothering him, and as such, he didn't feel that he wanted to participate in shoot-around, but rather save his arm for the game itself. Well, McMillan has a policy that he wants those who are going to play in the game to be full participants in shoot-around. Otherwise, they need to either come off the bench or not show up to the game at all and just not play. Well, Trae chose the latter and didn't even make it out to the arena for the game, which was pretty bold to do considering the Hawks were already injury riddled without 2 of their starters in DeAndre Hunter and John Collins, would really need their leading scorer and best player in the lineup. And clearly there was more deeper rooted issues with Trae making this decision. Clearly he chose not to attend the game in protest for the options McMillan gave him just because he didn't want to be a part of shoot-around. Now, there was also mention from other outlets about the Hawks having concerns around Trae Young being that franchise player that they need, being that leader that they need him to be for making this organization a title contending team. I think it was a polite way of saying we need Trae Young to grow up because we've already had issues with him and the coach in the past, and this is becoming a problem yet again. Of course, the other piece of all of this, maybe not necessarily tension, but it's something that would clearly affect the locker room, is all the trade rumors surrounding John Collins and to a smaller extent Clint Capella. John Collins has been in trade rumors for this team for the better part of 2 years now. Like, even before they signed him to that big extension in the 2021 offseason, there were talks that the Hawks were looking to move him. And they signed him to an extension, which was a near max extension, by the way, and even just a few months after that, the trade rumors continued, and especially now with his play declining. He's getting fewer touches and shot attempts after they added Murray. The Hawks are looking to move him again, although this time it's going to be a tall order considering his trade value is pretty low, and his contract is no longer looking very favorable as he's only in the second year of a 5-year deal. Clint Capella, same thing. Had that great first season when he joined the Hawks, the year that they went to the Eastern Conference Finals, and while he's still good, an elite level rebounder, a solid rim protector, he's not having the same level of success that we once saw in those early days in Atlanta. So you factor in all of the tension and the locker room drama surrounding this team, the fact that they're not very good. I'm not saying that they're bad, but they're certainly not what most people thought they would be after acquiring a star player like Dejounte Murray. I know they've been going through injuries, but that's more recent than anything. It's not like they've had guys out all season, and they're still with their 2 best players. They're one of the worst teams in the league in three-point shooting, 27th in terms of percentage, dead last in terms of three-pointers made, and they're not a very good passing team despite having 2 great passers in the backcourt, yet they're 20th in the league in assists. They're 15th in the NBA on offensive rating and 13th in the league in defensive rating. An average team, maybe a slightly above average team. but this is by no means a title contending team. And when you're an average to a slightly above average franchise that doesn't have much to show for the future, yeah, that's going to lead to frustration and disgruntled players when things don't go the way that they had anticipated. And it's more frustrating when you sit back and realize just how much they had to give up to get Murray. Now, I talked about this in my last video. I mean, it's obviously nowhere near as egregious as the amount the Timberwolves traded to the Utah Jazz for Rudy Gobert. That was just insane. But still, 3 first-round picks, 2 of which are unprotected picks for Dejounte Murray. Murray is a great player. He's turned himself into a very nice two-way player in the NBA with his much improved play on offense to go along with his already great scrappy defense, a great passer, very good court vision, a solid rebounder for his size, but he's never been a great three-point shooter, more known for his slashing ability. And then the other piece that was uncertain was just how well him and Trae Young would fit together. Would their offense and defense complement each other in the backcourt? And look, I cannot stress enough, as I mentioned in the last video when talking about the Rudy Gobert trade and the experiment for the Wolves and that being a disaster, but I cannot stress enough how risky it is for a team to trade an unprotected pick. It's absolutely mind-boggling to me that in a league in which they have a draft lottery for which, over the course of time, they have begun to even out the odds for lottery teams as a means to disincentivize tanking, since now finishing at the bottom doesn't give you as high of odds to land the number 1 pick as it did before. So it's crazy to me that one would trade an unprotected pick in today's NBA, knowing very well that so many things can happen over the course of a season, whether it be through injuries, the overall fit on the roster, increased competition in your division or conference, or even if you think by making a given trade for an all-star like the Hawks did with Murray, even if you think there is no chance that you could possibly fall into the lottery. There's no way with the talent we have on our roster that we could miss the playoffs. Well, tell that to the Lakers, who traded multiple first-round picks for Anthony Davis to the Pelicans that were unprotected and as such have had to ship out high draft picks to the Pelicans as a result. I'm not saying the Hawks are going to miss the playoffs this season. No, barring any crazy circumstance or any major injury to one of their better players, there's no way that they're going to miss the playoffs this season. But who knows what the landscape of the league and construction of their roster will look like in 2025 and 2027. Those are the 2 picks that they owe to the Spurs that are unprotected. Like, who knows if Trae Young, with the way things have gone with him and Coach Nate McMillan, who knows if he starts demanding a trade? Or what if Murray, for some reason, becomes unhappy if they're unable to reach an extension to his contract, which he will be extension eligible this upcoming offseason, or say they don't reach an extension, but Murray balls out in the final year of his deal next season and then requires more money than the Hawks can afford in an extension and ends up walking for nothing in free agency. Again, unlikely scenarios, but more so pointing out that so much can happen in the NBA over the course of 3 to 5 years. The NBA is an ever-changing landscape, and having unprotected picks that far into the future is such a huge gamble, knowing that you could still finish with the 9th seed and somehow manage to land the number 1 pick, or hell, even picks 1 through 4. It's unprotected. No matter what the pick is, they have to ship it out. And a high lottery pick, especially in a stacked draft class, can change the trajectory of your franchise by landing a future superstar, but instead, you end up having to give that pick away to the team that it's owed to. So all this to say, I could really see this being a situation that starts to unravel for the Atlanta Hawks if they don't get things together, because quite frankly, they don't have the type of players with the requisite maturity and leadership skills to be able to handle the tough times, the struggles, and the grind of the NBA season. And if things get really out of hand, you could very well see a team that traded 3 first-round picks to just be a perpetual average team in the NBA. Let me know what you guys think of the Atlanta Hawks and where they find themselves currently. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.